Very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege to welcome you all. And of course, our distinguished speaker, Mr. Harish Bhat, will be talking about India and Tata, inspiring stories from 152 years of the Tata Group. And as mentioned in the slide, this talk is held under the auspices of the Wagh Bakri AMS Center for Governance. AMA has got various activity centers, and this particular center is devoted to studies and talks and on governance. Um, Friends, we all know that the Tata Group has not only one of the largest conglomerates or the business houses in India, but also one of the most reputed and known for its very innovative practices. It was the pioneer of professional management in India. It is known for its innovative practices, very high standards of ethics, and always going by the books and so many other things. But above all, this group has always brought the human factor in the forefront, I'll say like that, and known for its very great, path-breaking HR practices, and of course, not forgetting the philanthropic work it is doing for the society. Terms like CSR and all that are very legal things which have come in the just past few years. But this kind of human activities were very old by the Tatas, and they were pioneers in many of these practices. Anyway, uh, over the years, it has been innovating a lot and brought about a lot of transformation in terms of processes, different businesses, and all that. But anyway, let's leave that to the expert. And before I hand over to him, I will give a short introduction about Mr. Harish Bhat, who is we're also privileged to have him on earlier occasions at AMA. Mr. Harish Bhat at present is the brand custodian of at Tata Sons Limited, the holding company of the Tata Group, and and he's also currently the chairman of Tata Coffee Limited and director on several Tata Group companies, including the retailing company Trent Limited and Tata Starbucks, Infinity Retail, Tata Unistore, and Tata EIA Life Insurance. And of course, he has a great innings with Tata for over 30 years. And he has played very senior roles, because I remember his role is at Titan. And several, he was involved in several strategic moves of the group over the past 2 decades, including the launch and nurturing of many iconic brands of the Tata Group, the successful turnaround of the jewelry business, I mentioned Titan Group, Titan Company, as well as the acquisition of Tetley. Mr. Bhatt is an alumnus of BITS Pilani, and of course, I am Ahmedabad, and he graduated at the top of his class in both institutions. And a decade later, he won the Shivning Scholarship for Young Managers, which is given by the basically the British government. Uh, and in 2017, he received the Distinguished Alumnus Award from the BITS Pilani. He has a strong professional interest in strategy, consumer behavior, business economics, and business history, and has been a member of the Consumer Insights Panel of the Economic Development Board, Government of Singapore. He is a member on the Board of Governors of the Advertising Standards Council of India. And yes, as many of you are aware, and his last visit to AMA was also for his book launch of his second book. He's a prolific writer who contributes regularly to various national publications. In 2012, his first book was published by Penguin that was known as Tata Log. In the book, he narrates stories from modern history of the Tata Group set to an overarching theme. His second book, titled Curious Marketeer, was published in 2017, again by Penguin. This book discusses why curiosity is very important to marketeers and how they can improve their curiosity quotient, a wonderful term. And as I mentioned, once again, we are very fortunate to have Harish Bhatt, and he was there at AMA on 2 or 3 earlier occasions. So welcome once again, sir, and all over to you, and whatever format or presentation you have, depending on your timing, you know the duration of this. So you can absolutely carry on. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Bhat.
Thank you. Thank you for those warm and you know warm words of welcome, uh, Mr. Radia. Really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to speak at Ahmedabad, though I know I'm speaking virtually from Mumbai now, to
Yeah,
members of the Ahmedabad Management Association. At the beginning, I want to just say how much I appreciate your invitation. And it is my pleasure today to narrate a few stories from the Tata Group. Friday evenings are for storytelling, and I hope all of you enjoy these stories. Uh, it's particularly a privilege to address all of you at Ahmedabad because I am an alumnus of one of the institutes located in Ahmedabad. I am Ahmedabad, which has shaped me and shaped my career over the past 3 decades. Um, I wish I could have been there with you in person, but given the circumstances, I think we will make do with this virtual webinar. I'm now going to request my colleague Sri Lakshmi to put a few slides on screen just for us to talk through some of these stories. And today, the theme of my lecture is actually Tata in India. So, the nation and Tata, how are they connected and how have they been connected over the years is the story that I'm going to try to narrate. If we can move to the next, and this picture here on the, before we move on, the picture that you saw on the slide here is that of Jamshedji Tata, the founder of the Tata Group, at the Jubilee Park in Jamshedpur with the flag of India towering over him. Uh, Let me move on to talk about the Tata that all of us know. All of us know that Tata is India's most preferred brand. We are a strong number one brand in India. Brand Finance last year valued the brand at $20 billion. Tata is the only Indian brand to feature amongst the top 100 brands globally at the 85th rank, and we have been improving our rank year on year. Very importantly, every second Indian uses some Tata product or the other. It could be Tata tea, it could be Tata salt, it could be Tata cars or Voltas air conditioners or Titan watches. But every second Indian uses a Tata product, which means 700 million, roughly about 700 million Indians use a Tata product day in and day out in their lives. Now, what has made that possible? Of course, one thing which has made it possible is the quality of our products and services. The Tata Group has believed ever since its birth in providing products and services of excellent quality and value at fair prices to consumers. And I think if the group has done this for 152 years, that has built a certain respect and trust for what the group does. So if you look at the products on the screen here in front of you, and I'm not going to narrate them again, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you in the audience, have interacted or used at least one of these products sometime or the other in your family or while traveling or in your homes. Uh, and that is very important. The quality of our products and services at fair prices is very important. So is the impression that the consumer and the Indian carries in his or her mind that the Tata Group will be fair to them, and the fact that the Tata Group stands for, like Mr. Radia said, ethical standards and ethical way of doing business. But I do not think that the quality of products and services alone is the reason for the longevity of the group and why it has survived for 152 years. I think it's much more than that. I think it is the group's commitment to the nation and the community, which has actually made it one with the country today. I think most Indians would like to say that they own the Tata brand, and that is true. Metaphorically, that's very true because Indians feel that love for this brand which has survived and grown and flourished for 152 years. But what are those episodes and what are those stories which has created this love between India and the Tata Group? Let me narrate some of those stories. Let me start, and some of these stories, some of you may know, some of these stories you may not know, but look at the entirety of this over the next 35, 40 minutes to get the essence of what I'm trying to convey. Let me start with the story of Jamshedji Tata in 1902 and his desire to have India's first integrated steel plant. This was a time when India did not make its own steel for its requirements. And Jamshedji Tata was convinced that the country cannot depend on just imported steel from Britain. And remember that we were ruled by the British at that time. But he thought it's important to have Swadeshi steel, steel made in the country for the country. Why? Because steel is important for every element of infrastructure, for bridges, for roads, for buildings, name it, steel is important for every element of infrastructure. But how do you create an integrated steel plant in India? Actually, when Jamshedji Tata announced his intention to do that, the British were skeptical. And the chief engineer of the British Railways, Sir Frederick Upcott, famously said, if the Tatas manage to make steel in India, I will eat every pound of that steel. That's what he said. Jamshedji Tata was not in any manner bothered by these skeptics. He went all the way to the United States of America, to Pittsburgh, which is the home of US Steel. He found out who the best metallurgists in the world were. He then went to New York and he convinced one of the leading metallurgists of that time, Charles Page Perrin, to leave the comforts of New York and come to the jungles of Eastern India to prospect for iron ore and set up a steel plant. Imagine that. I can't imagine that, in the 1890s and in the early 1900s, the best metallurgist in the world coming all the way from New York to Eastern India, deciding to relocate here to help Jamshedji Tata set up a steel plant. But Charles Page Perrin says, when Jamshedji Tata explained his vision to me, there was fire in his eyes. And the passion which came out of his entire narration so moved me that at the end, when he asked me, will you come to India, I gladly came. So then, with help from experts across the world, they found iron ore, they found coking coal, they established Tata Steel in what was then called Sakchi, which is now called the town of Jamshedpur. And by 1913, Tata Steel was producing its own ingots of steel. They actually went to help the Allies during World War One, and for creating rails in the African continent during World War One. And Tata Steel, of course, thereafter has grown from strength to strength. Today, there is a large plant in Jamshedpur. There is a large plant in Kalinganagar. Tata Steel, as you know, last year acquired Bhushan Steel and Usha Martin. So it's now one of the finest and largest companies in the world. But going back to the reason for its creation, which is what I want to emphasize today, that reason was because Jamshedji Tata thought having an integrated steel plant in India was very, very important for this country. We could not depend on steel from outside or imported steel. It became a very profitable venture, but profit was not the core reason. The core reason was he felt India required it at that point in time. If I can move on to the next story from Tata Steel and go to the story of the Taj. I don't think any Indian, I think all of you would have seen this skyline of Mumbai, the Taj Mahal Hotel near the Gateway of India. Yesterday we were commemorating. It was a sad day because 26/11 was when the Taj was subjected to a terror attack many years ago. But since then, it has recovered in its resplendent glory. But I'm going back to the time when Jamshedji Tata thought of setting up the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai. He had already decided to set up a steel plant. Why would an industrialist setting up a steel plant think of setting up a luxury hotel, which is costly to set up? It's expensive. And the luxury hotels in those days don't give returns easily. There is a story which sometimes goes around, but which is incorrect, saying that Jamshedji Tata set up the Taj because he was not permitted entry into a European hotel in Mumbai, the Watson's Hotel. But that is incorrect. There is no evidence to show that he did that for that reason at all. And he was not petty-minded at that level either to set up a hotel just because he had been rejected from another place. The fact is that in the 1890s, Bombay suffered from the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague ripped through Mumbai. Millions of people left the city because the plague, just like the pandemic we have now, but I think at several levels, higher level of severity. The bubonic plague ripped Mumbai. There were deaths everywhere. Millions of people left the financial capital of the country. And there was a time when the city of Mumbai was down on its knees. Visitors had stopped coming to Mumbai. And therefore, the financial capital of India had ground to a halt. And Jamshedji Tata is reported to have told the then editor of the Times of India that I want to do something that will get the visitors back to our city. I want to do something that will put our city back on its feet. This was a city he loved. So therefore, he went to the Bombay Port Trust, bought 5.5 acres of land at an auction quite suddenly without even informing anyone else. And he decided to put up on that land Mumbai's first luxury hotel. The reason was that he wanted Mumbai back on its feet after the plague pandemic, and he wanted a new symbol which awes people, a new symbol which stands for a new resplendent Mumbai after the plague had gone away. To make sure that happened, he didn't put up just another luxury hotel. He got Turkish baths, he got an ice factory to create an air conditioning system which could pump cool air into the rooms of Mumbai, into the rooms of the Taj. The Taj Mahal Hotel was, in fact, the very first building in Mumbai to be electrified, and half the city turned out to see the lights come on. It had spun pillars from Paris, and it had the best facilities from across the world because he wanted to make it the grandest. The actor Gregory Peck has called this hotel a shining jewel of the East. Today, it always features amongst the top and most luxurious and most preferred hotels in the world. But the story I wanted to narrate to you is the reason why Jamshedji Tata set up this hotel, which is to bring the city of Mumbai back on its feet after the bubonic plague pandemic. Let me move on to a third story now. And the third story is also from the time of our founder Jamshedji Tata. I will then cover stories closer to our time. He felt, just like he felt that steel is important for the country, he felt that education in science and technology is very, very important for India. Those were long past days. There were no universities of higher education in science in India, did not exist at that time. There were universities of the arts and commerce, of course. So Jamshedji Tata had in 1892, he had sponsored for the first time in India scholarships for Indians to go abroad and study. But those scholarships can only be given to a few people because education abroad is expensive. So he said, why not establish a higher education University of Science in India itself? Once again, he put forward this idea to Lord Curzon, who was then the Viceroy of India. And Lord Curzon was skeptical. He said, will you get professors to teach here? Will there be demand? Will students come here to learn? And he kind of delayed the idea. He didn't give permission right away. Again, this did not deter Jamshedji Tata. Some of you may know that Jamshedji Tata on a famous ship voyage to the United States of America met Swami Vivekananda, who was a young monk then, and got to know him. And when he came back, Jamshedji Tata sought Swami Vivekananda's help in evangelizing the concept of a university of science and higher studies in science for India. Swami Vivekananda actually published an appeal in Prabuddha Bharati, saying that this venture is very important for the country and asking for people to donate towards it. Eventually, Jamshedji Tata met the Diwan of the Maharaja of Mysore, Sir Seshadri Iyer, and the Maharaja of Mysore gave land for this university. But it still required resources for the buildings and for the facilities and the laboratories and everything else to come up. So Jamshedji Tata took 1/3 of his wealth. Many of the buildings he owned in Mumbai at that time, he was one of the largest landowners in Mumbai at that time. And he created a separate endowment to fund the Indian Institute of Science. Actually, in his will, he called it his third son. Jamshedji Tata had two sons, Dorabji Tata and Sir Ratan Tata, but he called this his third child. And in 1913, he had passed away by then. But the idea was his. The Indian Institute of Science was born. It had adequate demand of students. It has had fabulous professors, including Nobel Prize winners, people like Professor C.V. Raman, uh, more recently Professor C.N.R. Rao. And every year when the rating of universities globally comes about, the Indian Institute of Science is always ranked today India's #1 science university. But we must remember that here was an industrialist who had nothing to do with universities. But back in the 1910s or 1900s, early 1900s, he decided that this was important for the nation. And therefore, he gave it his all to make sure that the Indian Institute of Science came about. I may not have time today to narrate all the flavors of the story. But if any of you read about the Indian Institute of Science and how it came up, the number of obstacles were very many, from the British, from lack of resources. There were obstacles around getting the right professors and the right curriculum. And you will see how Jamshedji Tata broke down each of those obstacles to make this possible. In fact, if you go to Bangalore today and use an auto rickshaw to travel in Malleshwaram, where this university, Indian Institute of Science, is located, many auto rickshaw drivers don't recognize Indian Institute of Science, but tell them I want to go to Tata Institute, and they will easily take you there. So those are three stories I wanted to narrate from Jamshedji Tata's time back in the 1890s and 1910s. But let me move on now to the next chairman of the Tata Group, 1916. By now, Jamshedji Tata had passed away, and his son, Sir Dorabji Tata, was now the chairman of the Tata Group. In Jamshedji Tata's time itself, he had campaigned for clean power to the city of Mumbai. Mumbai at that time had a lot of textile mills, which were, and the power which was required for them came from burning coal, which led to a lot of pollution in the city. And Jamshedji Tata therefore felt that we should have clean power delivered to the city of Mumbai. So his son, Sir Dorabji Tata, decided to build dams in the Western Ghats near Lonavala, which could capture the water there, bring it all the way down uh, for turbines to work to generate hydroelectricity, and that hydroelectricity then feeds the textile mills of Mumbai. This is the first such dam that he put up, the Valwan Dam. It's still very much in existence and functioning wonderfully well. If any of you go up, drive from Bombay to Lonavala, you will see this dam on one side of the road. But we must remember that when it came up in 1916, it was by far the first large hydroelectric project to come up in this part of the country. Within a few years, it was feeding virtually half the city of Mumbai and its mills. And even today, as you know, a significant part of the city of Mumbai is fed by Tata Power, which is the successor company to the organization which was founded at Valwan so many years ago. That is the story of the Valvan Dam. Once again, like steel or like the University of Science, the first time in India, a major hydroelectric project. But should you think that it's only industry and education that the Tata Group have been involved in, listen to the next story, which fascinated me when I looked at it. This is Sir Dorab Tata on the left. He was the second chairman of the Tata Group and the son of the founder, Jamshedji Tata. Now, Dorab Tata was, of course, an accomplished industrialist. But in addition to being an industrialist, he was also a keen sports person. It is said that he could ride a horse from Mumbai to Kirki within a few hours flat. Once, Dorab Tata was at Pune, where he was giving out the sports awards at a gymkhana in Pune. And when he was doing that, he saw some Indians run incredibly fast. They were Indian farmers and peasants from the western region of the country. They were participating in some competitions. And he saw them running, and he saw them running very, very fast. He thought, my God, these people are running very fast, just like the runners that I have seen in Europe. And then he thought to himself, if we have such wonderful sports people in our country, why is an Indian team not represented in the Olympics? After all, the Olympics is the largest celebration of sports in the world. All the nations come together to play sport, to participate in athletics, to play hockey, the variety of games and athletics and sports. So he got charged up with saying, there is pride in our country being represented in the Olympics. And he then got the citizens of Pune together and he said, I'm willing to sponsor the first team. I'm willing to sponsor three runners to the Olympics. And at that time, there was no Olympic Association of India. So he put a selection team together. And then he got the governor of Bombay to speak to the International Olympic Committee to get India accredited into the Olympic movement. And then he sent, that pride in the country. He sent the first ever Indian team to ever participate in the Olympics, to the Antwerp Olympics of 1920. There were three runners and two wrestlers in that team. They came from places as diverse as Pune and Karnataka and Maharashtra and Bengal. Purma Banerjee of Bengal carried the flag, a sprinter. The people you see on the right was the first Indian team to the Olympics. You're seeing them there with their manager and their coach, but the rest of the people there are the first Indian team to the Olympics, three runners and two wrestlers. They participated in the Antwerp Olympics, and what a proud moment it must have been for India when the Indian flag for the very first time was carried into the Antwerp Stadium. Dorabji Tata came back from there and said, sports is so important to the country. It's so important for pride, national pride, but it's also important for health and fitness. He got the director of the YMCA in Mumbai, Dr. Noren, to go across the country and evangelize sport, why people should play sport. Once again, in 1924, he decided to send the Indian team to the Paris Olympics. This time, many more states had got energized and motivated. So some resources also came from the local Maharajas and from the states. And he sent India's second team to the Olympics in 1924. In 1927, he was appointed the founder president of the Indian Olympic Association, which was formed in 1927. Even now, if you go to the website of the Indian Olympic Association, you will see Dorabji Tata's photograph there as the founder president. He was also nominated to the International Olympic Committee. And in 1928, he sent India's third team to the Olympics, this time at Amsterdam, 21 people, including a hockey team, which had been nominated by the Indian Hockey Federation. That hockey team, which included the legendary Dhyan Chand, won every match, beat a number of European countries, and then in the finals, they defeated Netherlands by scoring 3 goals and won the Olympic gold for the first time ever in India's history. What a proud moment that must have been, ladies and gentlemen, for the entire nation. After that, as you're aware, the Indian men's hockey team won several more Olympic golds, but that was the first one. And the origin of this was Dorabji Tata's urge that there is national pride in being represented in the Olympics and we should send a team there. This happened in the year 1920. This year, actually, we are celebrating 100 years of India's first team to the Olympics. So this is a very, very special story that I wanted to share with you. I was myself not aware of this story until I researched this in our archives. I was not aware of it in such detail, but it just shows that, if you really want to take pride in your nation and make sure that your people across the nation rise up in pride, there are many, many ways of doing it. Industry is one, but sports is another. If I can now move on to the next story, and I'm now moving on from the time of Dorabji Tata to the time of J.R.D. Tata. Dorabji Tata passed away in 1932. J.R.D. Tata was a young man at that time. And J.R.D. Tata thought to himself, if our country has to develop, one of the things that the country needs is aviation. And airlines had been formed by then across the world, but India did not have a commercial airline in 1932. So J.R.D. Tata collaborated with a British pilot Neville Vincent, whom you can also see in the photograph in a white shirt and trouser and a black tie. He was a pilot from the Royal Air Force and an entrepreneur. And J.R.D. Tata said, I'm going to start India's first commercial airline. Once again, when he approached the government and said, would the government provide some risk capital, the government of India, which was ruled by the British then, refused to do so. So J.R.D. went up to the Tata Group and requested the Tata Group to put that risk capital in. After a lot of discussion and debate, the Tatas agreed to support him in founding India's first commercial airline. In 1932, with just two aircraft, two Pusmoth aircraft that were purchased, J.R.D. Tata launched Tata Airlines. The first flight started from Karachi, came to Ahmedabad, came to Mumbai, and then went on to Chennai. On the 15th of October 1932, J.R.D. Tata himself piloted the first flight from Karachi, carrying airmail. That was an airmail flight. There were no passengers yet. It would be another year before passengers were carried by Tata Airlines. He piloted that flight, came to Ahmedabad, delivered some airmail in Ahmedabad, then came to Mumbai, and at the dot of 4 o'clock landed at Juhu Airport in 1932. And then, of course, from Mumbai to Chennai, Neville Vincent piloted the flight. Tata Airlines was very successful. In fact, in its first 5 years, it is said to have had a 99.4% punctuality record. And the Directorate of Civil Aviation in 1934-35 is reported to have said, how do the Tatas do this? Even the Imperial Airways should come and study from the Tatas. But the story does not end here. Later on, of course, Tata Airlines was nationalized by the government and became Air India. J.R.D. Tata continued as chairman of the airline for many more years. You can see him here descending from an Air India flight. But when the time came for the 50th anniversary of the 1932 flight, J.R.D. was by then a 78-year-old man. And he said, I'm going to pilot this flight again. We should recreate the 1932 flight because it will inspire many younger people. By then he was 78. He had had a mild heart attack as well, but he insisted with his doctors that he was now fit enough to fly. And he was a stubborn man. And the doctor said, maybe it's good for him if he flies. He will be even more depressed if he doesn't fly, or he'll be even more agitated if he doesn't fly. So they permitted him to fly. And J.R.D. Tata flew the 50th anniversary flight once again from Karachi to Ahmedabad to Mumbai. From Karachi to Ahmedabad, he had a co-pilot. As he landed in Mumbai, he was welcomed by aircraft of the Indian Air Force. But one girl, and there's a difference, one girl who was watching him land in Mumbai in 1982 was none other than Kalpana Chawla. She was so inspired by what JRD did in 1932 and 1982 that she decided to study aviation further. She went to the United States and she became India's first woman astronaut. So and J.R.D. Tata in fact said, at the age of 78, I wanted to recreate this flight so that young Indians can be inspired to do what they want to do in life. And they can know that nothing is beyond them if you have the will and the determination. So that is the founding of India's first commercial airline, 1932, by J.R.D. Tata. So if you go back and look at the stories I've narrated so far, Tata Steel, the Taj Hotel, the Indian Institute of Science, Walwan Hydroelectric Dam, and Tata Power. Then I narrated the story of the first Indian team at the Olympics. And now, of course, India's first commercial airline. What binds these stories together is actually a love for India and doing what they thought India required. Of course, it was their personal view and the view of the company that they headed, but they did whatever they did because they thought India required it. The next example or the next story shows that even more. The next story, we are now coming close to independence, and it was 1944. It was clear by then that the British will leave India and create an independent India. But at that time, the British had not created an economic plan for India's future. What would happen if India became independent without an economic plan and with only a political plan? And actually, the British thought that the Indians are not capable of planning for ourselves. J.R.D. Tata would not stand for that. He connected with G.D. Birla And along with a few more industrialists, Lala Shri Ram, Kasturbai Lalbai, A.D. Shroff, they began working on a plan for the economic development of India. And they used technocrats from the Tata Group, such as Dr. John Mathai, who later became the Railway and Finance Minister in Nehru's cabinet, also A.D. Shroff, uh, and Sir Ardarshiv Dalal. So a set of several industrialists, Purushottam Das Thakurdas, J.R.D. Tata, G.D. Birla, Lala Shriram, and Kasturbai Lalbai wrote the very first economic plan for India 3 years before India became independent. This was published in the year 1944, very well regarded. Actually, it was published as a booklet and it was sold out. It was published at a rupee, I think, at that point in time. Everyone objected to the plan. The Gandhians objected to it, saying this plan relies too much on large industry. The communists objected to it. The British objected to it. Yet J.R.D. Tata was proud enough to publish this. Actually, it was called the Tata Birla Plan for some time because both J.R.D. Tata and G.D. Birla were involved, and some people call it the Bombay Plan. Um, it looked at what every Indian requires, the calorific content requires, the food required, the infrastructure required. It's a beautiful document. I was fascinated to read this document in the Tata archives and understand that this was created in 1944. Of course, after independence, India went on to create its own economic plans, the 5-year plans. There is no evidence that Nehru used the Bombay plan for any reference. But the fact is that a group of industrialists, including J.R.D. Tata, created India's first economic plan 3 years before independence. And the British were actually stung by it, saying, how could they do this? Does it show us in a good light? Then, of course, in 1947, India got its independence. And this is the message that J.R.D. Tata sent to Jawaharlal Nehru on that wonderful day. At 7 p.m. on the 14th of August 1947, he said, Dear Jawaharlal, on this day my thoughts go to you, whose steadfast and inspired leadership have brought India to her goal through these long years of struggle and suffering. I rejoice that you have always held so high the torch of freedom. And now you're the first Prime Minister of Free India. And I send you my heartfelt wishes for success in the heavy task of guiding her to a great destiny. Of course, J.R.D. Tata also did his best to play a role in that destiny. In the 1950s, for instance, he started Telco, which is Tata Motors now, initially making railway locomotives for the Indian Railways, thereafter making trucks, and that's how the famous Tata trucks were born during that period of time, initially in collaboration with Mercedes-Benz, and thereafter the Tatas themselves. But if I move to my next story now, I'm coming to 1969. And this is a story on everyone's minds because yesterday one of the legends of the Tata Group, Mr. Fakir Chand Kohli, passed away in 1969, well before the computers revolution had started anywhere in the world or in India. J.R.D. Tata asked F.C. Kohli to set up India's first IT services company, TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. Mr. Fakir Chand Kohli was the founder CEO of this great enterprise, which is today famous not just in India but across the world, and one of the finest enterprises of its kind anywhere on the face of this planet. It actually spearheaded the IT services revolution in India, creating a huge industry which has provided so much employment to lakhs of Indians over the years. But remember that J.R.D. Tata and Fakir Chand Kohli sat together and started this enterprise, Tata Consultancy Services, in 1969, before you or I had heard of computers or had even started using computers in our country. It was initially founded as an in-house division of Tata Sons. Thereafter, it became a separate company. You can see here the initial mainframe computer used in the Air India building where Tata Consultancy Services had its offices during those days. But if you just go to the next picture, you will see the big transformation. This is the Sirusiri campus of Tata Consultancy Services now. It is by any stretch of imagination one of the most respected and reputed companies in our country, having addressed Y2K, having addressed IT services across the world, and now on the forefront of digital. Once again, that was a contribution of the Tata Group of J.R.D. Tata and F.C. Kohli to the nation of India. If I now were to move on, and there are so many stories I can now narrate, but let me move on to 1999 because I could well narrate the story of Tata Salt or the story of Tanishq. But let me move on to the story of Tata Indica, which is a very, very special story. Because here again, by now, Mr. Ratan Tata was the chairman of the Tata. I have told you about Jamshedji Tata, about Dorabji Tata, about JRD Tata, and now Ratan Tata had taken over as chairman of the Tata Group. And he felt at this time that India needed its own indigenous car. India had cars on the roads then. Ambassador and Fiat, all of us who are old enough have seen them. They were old and tired cars, not made for India. Then, of course, the Maruti 800 came to India. But the Maruti 800 was designed in Japan. It was only assembled in Gurgaon. And all of us know how Maruti was formed at that time. And the cars were not specifically designed for the country. Hyundai had also just launched. But what the vision that Mr. Ratan Tata had in mind is a car which is designed, developed, and manufactured in India. All the ancillary parts are made in India, so that it also creates ancillary companies which make those parts. When he stood up and spoke at the Automobile and Manufacturers Association in 1995, no one believed him. No one believed that India could make its own car. But remember, at that time, India had already put a spacecraft into space, Aryabhata. India already had its nuclear, the Pokhran explosion had already happened under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Yet people said cars need a lot of technology, and they were very, very skeptical. So Ratan Tata said if companies cannot come together and make India's first car, the Tatas will do it. He got a car designed by his engineers at ERC working along with an Italian company, IBO. He then idea. It was very expensive to get a new car plant into the country. His team and he looked around the world. They found a disused car plant of Nissan in Australia. They were able to buy it at 1/6 the cost of a first-hand car plant. They dismantled it brick by brick in Australia, brought it all the way to India and put it up at Tata Motors Pune. That is where the Indica car was created. I have spoken to workers who built the Indica car, and even today they have tears of pride in their eyes that they built India's first car. It apparently took them 8 days to build India's first car at that time. Now, of course, every 58 seconds there is a car which comes out of the Tata Motors, automated plant in Pune. And now there are wonderful cars like the Nexon and the Harrier, and of course the Nexon electric vehicle, which is India's fastest selling EV electric vehicle today. But this dream was born and in 1999, and as you know, Tata Motors recently has announced that they've sold 4 million cars, 4 million passenger vehicles across this stretch of history. But this is no different from Jamshedji Tata's dream of creating steel, India's first integrated steel plant, or JRD Tata's vision of creating India's first commercial airline. Here was Ratan Tata wanting to create India's first car. The Tata Indica had some initial quality issues, but later on, by 2002, 2003, it went on to become the fastest selling car on the roads of India, which was a great triumph. And even until today, people have a lot of admiration and regard it with a lot of fondness and love. I'm now running out of time, so I must move very quickly now to 2004. And in 2004, the Tata Group, led by Mr. Ratan Tata, came to the view that cancer is one of the biggest scourges of our age. The Tata Memorial Hospital had already been set up in Parel in Mumbai many years ago by the Dorabji Tata Trust, but there were a number of cancer cases coming in the Northeast and Calcutta. And led by that, the Tata Trust decided to create the Tata Medical Center at Rajarhat in Calcutta, which is the finest cancer hospital in the eastern part of our country. And today, because of course, now we are in the midst of a COVID crisis, but cancer still continues to remain a huge scourge in the country. And the Tata Trust, therefore, have employed a lot of their funding. They are, of course, as you know, 66% owners of Tata Sons. They've employed a lot of their funding to create new Tata cancer hospitals in select states in the country, and also create a cancer grid which brings these hospitals together. And now, if I were to go to the last story I want to narrate today, the 10th story is, of course, 2020. This has been, unfortunately, a year of a pandemic. when COVID-19 broke upon us with a ferocity that none of us imagined. There have been millions of cases across the world. But what I was very proud of was on the 28th of March, Mr. Ratan Tata as chairman of the Tata Trusts and Mr. N. Chandrasekharan as chairman of Tata Sons jointly committed from the Tata Group a sum of 1,500 crores towards fighting COVID in the country. Those funds have gone towards creating new hospitals. More than 2,000 new beds have come up over this period of time. They have gone towards providing PPE, personal protective equipment, to frontline staff. They have gone towards virtually new hospitals being created in Kasargod or in conjunction with DRDO in Mumbai, which are COVID hospitals. They've gone towards providing meals, millions of meals that the Taj has provided to migrant workers at a time when migrant workers were in crisis. More recently, they've gone towards the launch of Tata MD Check, which is a fast solution for COVID tests, which the Tata Group has more recently launched. So I felt very proud of this because at this point, the national need was resourced to fight COVID-19. And hopefully we will be out of the situation, after vaccination comes and a good part of India is vaccinated. But in the year of crisis, once again, the Tata Group responded by committing a very, very significant proportion of funds to the fight against COVID-19. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reaching the end of my talk now. And if you can, I'm going back and requesting you to reflect for a couple of minutes on all the stories that I've narrated. Tata Steel, Taj, the Walwan Dam, Indian Institute of Science, India, the Indian team, first Indian team at the Olympics, Tata Airlines, the Bombay or the Tata Birla Plan, the building of Tata Consultancy Services, India's first IT services company, and the Tata Indica, the fight against cancer, and now the fight against COVID-19. In many ways, if you look at these, they go back to the origin, why our founder set up our group, the Tata Group. Of course, he set it up to be profitable and earn economic returns. That is very important. But he did not define that as the purpose of it. He said in a free enterprise, the community is not just another stakeholder in business, but is in fact the very purpose of its existence. He set up the Tata Group for the nation and for the community. That is why he and his sons transferred 66% of their equity in Tata Sons to the Tata Trust. And until today, the Tata Charitable Trust holds 66% of our equity, and they use the dividends that they obtain from Tata Sons to fund the community projects, including the cancer project that I spoke about, or the COVID-19 project that I spoke about. But the fact is that this is the purpose which has defined the Tata's existence. And that is why there is so much that has so seamlessly happened across leadership, across chairman of the company, from Jamshedji Tata all the way until today when Mr. N. Chandrasekharan is chairman. So much that has happened, all going towards India. And these 10 stories, I can narrate to you many, many more stories of this kind, but I hope these 10 stories bring out for us loud and clear why I have said that there's an intimate connection between India and Tata, and why every Indian feels that she or he actually owns or participates in the Tata brand. I want to end this brief presentation and leave a little bit of time for questions and answers by this quotation by Mahatma Gandhi, who in Jamshedpur in 1925 said, "In serving the Tatas, God grant that in serving the Tatas, you will also serve India. You will always realize that you're here for a much higher mission than merely working for an industrial enterprise." That is why people like me have spent the last 33 years working with the Tata Group. After graduating from IIM Ahmedabad, I feel very inspired to be part of this group, which is dedicated to the nation and the community. A couple of minutes to show you two more slides. There is a very intimate connection that Jamshedji Tata and the Tata Group has with Gujarat. Jamshedji Tata was born at Navsari in Gujarat. You can see here his ancestral house in Navsari, where he was born. That's a very, very intimate connection with Gujarat. And of course, of the first three enterprises that Jamshedji Tata started, there was the Empress Mills in Nagpur, the Swadeshi Mills in Mumbai, and the Ahmedabad Advanced Mills in Ahmedabad. So Ahmedabad was also the location where one of his first three industrial enterprises came up. And it's the profits made from these mills that he used to create Tata Steel and the Taj and other enterprises. So with those few words, I want to bring my presentation to an end. Those of you who want to read more Tata stories, please feel free to access LinkedIn. You know, on my page, if you follow me, you can, under the hashtag Tata Stories, you can read many more, 30, 40 stories that I've written there. Or you could pick up my book, Tata Log, which has 8 beautiful stories from the Tata Group. With those few words, it is my pleasure and privilege once again to address the Ahmedabad Management Association. I know we have only 10 minutes for questions and answers, but may I bring my presentation to a conclusion and thank all of you for giving me such a patient hearing. It's been wonderful speaking with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. You have truly charmed us with this wonderful story, and especially the last portion, those quotations, so they were really great. And, uh, the way you narrated the whole journey from, the beginning of disco to the Taj story into science and, so on, sports, aviation, cancer treatment, and of course, the great making of TCS in those days where, as you rightly said, people didn't know what computers were. But that time, the visionary J.R.D. Tata said that we want to make India's first computer company. And sir, like you, a few months ago, last year, Mr. Gopal Krishnan was in Ahmedabad very much at AMA. And one of the books released was about the making of TCS.
That's correct. That's correct.
It's so nice to hear about that. And yes, friends, this is a different kind of talk. And Radhika will coordinate the questions if they are put any in the question box, please, before we conclude.
Yeah,
Please.
I just want to mention, I will be able to answer questions on the history of the Tata Group, the Tata brand, and these stories. Perfect. I may not be able to answer questions on specific listed companies of the Tata Group, as you're aware, on a public platform like this. So yes, therefore, I'd be grateful if questions can be on the subject of this presentation.
Yeah, it's always like that. The questions these sessions have always to be relevant to the topic only.
Thank you.
Very clear, sir. Yeah.
I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The first question is that how does Tata still instill its values in its managers?
So I think there are 2-3 things. Okay, one, we have very important documents within the Tata Group, like the Tata Code of Conduct and the Tata Business Excellence Model. These are followed by every company of the group, and they help instill many of the values and processes of the group within our managers. Second, very importantly, even after so many years, we always celebrate Founders Day on 3rd March, the birthday of Jamshedji Tata. We always celebrate J.R.D. Tata's birthday on 29th July. And on these historic occasions, on these commemorative occasions, we talk about the values that those founders had put in place. And we use those days for everyone to go back and remember what has made us such a strong corporation. What is at the core of the Tata Group? Third, I believe that sometimes, the values come to light also through real life stories. That is why today I have not talked to you about any concepts of nation building. I have only narrated 10 stories. And we try our best to use storytelling as a method through our intranet, through various webinars, through various sessions. During the induction program, we have created a site where some of these stories are featured there also for every newcomer to learn. So it is through a number of practices like this that values can be instilled. Values and culture is a challenging area. It's not easy. It has to be constant work to engage and keep those values thriving, because every few years a new generation of employees comes into the group, and those values have to be transferred to them. So those are some of the methods that we use within the group.
Thank you, sir. The next question is how the leadership is nurtured in Tata Group?
Good question. I think there are many answers to the question, but let me say, first and foremost, every company in the Tata Group has a leadership development program. They use their leadership development program to develop leaders for the future of the company, for businesses, for businesses within the company, etc. Second, I think Tata Group companies also ensure that they recruit for the right leadership in the future, both through recruitment at entry levels and through recruitment at lateral levels. Third, we have a group HR team, and we also have a cadre called the Tata Administrative Service, which has over the years produced many, many leaders for the Tata Group. The Tata Administrative Service goes to the best business schools and best campuses in the country and recruits from them. Each of our companies also do that. So from an amalgam of recruitment by each company and a central cadre like the Tata Administrative Service, the Tata Group is able to keep a constant pipeline of leadership coming up for the future. Fourth, and very importantly, I would say that, there is also a lot of training and leadership intervention. The Tata Management Training Center at Pune conducts some exemplary leadership training programs. I have myself had the benefit of going through some of them, which have been eye-openers for me. So that kind of leadership training and development also at a group level happens across the course of the year. So it's a combination of these really. Like me, you will find several people who have lived on and worked in the Tata Group throughout our careers, and that also creates continuity in leadership of the group. Uh, and like me, you will find many people in Tata saying, I feel very proud and inspired to work in Tata, which is true, because when I come to office in the morning, or these days when I start work from home in the morning, I know that the profits that I'm helping the group to produce, I know that 66% of those profits are going to Tata Charitable Trust through dividends, who are helping the cause of the community and the nation. That's a nice feeling to have. And that by itself, I think, is hugely motivational for future leadership.
Thank you, sir. And the last question, I would like, due to paucity of time, we cannot take much questions, but the last question I would like to ask is, can you tell some brief idea about TIFR and TISS?
Yes, I can. I don't have too much time to answer. So let me focus on Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. Both these organizations were created by the Tata Trusts. In fact, the TISS was originally called the Dorabji Tata Institute of Social Work, and then it got converted to the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. It is one of the most reputed institutions of social studies within the country today. Is located in Chembur in Mumbai. In fact, at the time of independence, the TISS had even done studies on how refugees could be resettled into the country. So, the kind of social work they have done is also very interesting. TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, is India's finest institution of research in mathematics and many areas of computing. TIFR was actually an idea that was brought to the Tata Group by a name that you know very well, Homi Bhabha. So Dr. Homi Bhabha, who was himself a scientist, wanted an institution of this kind for research into computers, computations, and mathematics. He wrote to JRD Tata, uh, proposing the establishment of such an institute. And based on that, the Tata Trust considered that proposal and decided to invest in the setting up of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. In fact, India's first indigenous digital computer was developed at TIFR. It has many, many other achievements to its credit. And indeed, we are very proud as the Tata Group that we have been associated with the establishment of these two iconic institutions. So there is, if you look at the institutions the Tata Group has established over the years, there is the Indian Institute of Science, there is Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, the National Institute of Advanced Studies at Bangalore, of course, the Tata Memorial Hospital, the Tata Medical Center in Calcutta, many, many more. But these are the ones that come immediately. And of course, the National Center for Performing Arts in Mumbai. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And, before Mr. Radia speaks, I just want to say what a pleasure and privilege it has been meeting all of you. I hope to come to Ahmedabad in the future and address you in person if possible at a future date. But thank you, Mr. Radia, and thank you, Ahmedabad Management Association, for inviting me to deliver this talk. Over to you, sir.
It's always a pleasure, sir. And yes, I do agree with you that this Corona crisis, we thought a few months it would, but it's almost now 8-9 months. And we all wish that everybody can meet physically, not only for such events, but even, all kind of events have come to a standstill, and we can understand the agony people are facing. But again, thanks to technology, and again, companies like TCS, who are one of the great in this company, that in spite of all this crisis, we're able to do these activities today. And a lot of institutions across the country are doing these kind of events now virtually. And so that's the way it is. And sir, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for this talk. And you are a great storyteller always. And the talk, I will definitely say, it was not only informative but very, very inspiring and enriching, I'll say. So and you covered some of the very important milestones in the Tata journey. And having used the word journey, it was so smooth, and it remembers of that, the column in Reader's Digest, armchair traveler. So you took along this journey right from 1910 onwards, onwards. So it was very nice. And as I said, it's a pleasure to have you again at AMA. And I thank all the participants for participating in large numbers in this seminar, and also for the relevant questions. And as always, the AMA program, we are particular about punctuality. So we're beginning time and we end on time. So thank you once again, Mr. Harish Bhat, and thank you all the participants.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Radia. And I want to offer a special word of thanks to my colleague, Sri Lakshmi, who has helped put this presentation together. Yes. So, Sri, if you're on the line, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sri Lakshmi. And all of you have a great weekend. Thank you very much, sir. We will connect again. Thanks for that. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. I'll end the meeting over here. Good night.
Please do.
Thank you, Radhika. Thanks for all the help. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night, sir. Good night.
Good night.